I am a representative of the prisoner of war branch, MISX. You're about to see and hear 6 Americans who became prisoners of the Japanese in the Philippines after the fall of Bataan and Corregidor. They have been in the hands of the Japanese in various prison camps from that time until December 14th, 1944, when they made their escape from prison camp 10A on the island of Palawan, the westerly of the Philippine groups, and were evacuated by plane to the island of Morotai. I want you men to give the story in your own words as to what happened to you from the time of Pearl Harbor until the time you were rescued, or rather escaped, from the prison of war camp on the island of Palawan. I'd like you first to give your name, rank, and organization, and tell where you were at the time of the beginning of hostilities and your movements after that. All right, first man.
I'm Private First Class Eugene Nielsen. My home's in Logan, Utah. I was stationed on Corregidor in 59th Coast Artillery, Battery B.
That's at the time of Pearl Harbor?
Yes, sir.
And you stayed on Corregidor throughout the whole time during the fighting at Bataan? And you were on Corregidor at the time of the surrender, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, will you tell us just what happened to you?
Well, when Pearl Harbor was struck, we were waking up early in the morning, told that Pearl Harbor had been hit. We was in a pretty tough place.
Then what did you do?
Well, we was already on wartime alert status. We just laid around. We didn't know hardly what to think of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, when the Americans declared Manila an open city and started fighting down the Bataan Peninsula, what were you doing in Corregidor at that time?
At that time, I was stationed in the battery. Coast Artillery guns for seaward defense.
Well, what happened after the surrender at Bataan?
When Bataan surrendered, why, there were several of them that came over to Corregidor.
How did they come over?
They come over in boats and just all different ways, however they could get across.
What was your situation on Corregidor at that time as regards food, ammunition, medical supplies, and things like that?
We was short on food and ammunition of certain kinds.
And medical supplies?
Yes, sir. There was a shortage on medical supplies, too.
How long after the surrender at Corregidor did you stay on that island?
We stayed there for about 3 weeks.
And then where did you go?
Then we was loaded on boats and taken over to the shoreline between Cavite and Manila.
Mm-hmm. And from there?
From there, we were marched in through Manila to the Belbit prison. We got in there.
Go ahead.
We got in there that night. About 3 hours later, while we was taken down to the railroad station and loaded on boxcars. From there, we went to Cabana de Juan. We stayed at Cabana de Juan overnight, and the next morning we hiked up north of Bataan to a place we called Camp 3.
And how long did you stay at Camp 3?
I was at Camp 3 about 6 months.
And what were you doing there at that time, during that time?
I didn't do very much of anything during that time. We went out on wood details and carried wood in. That's about all.
How was the food in that camp? What did it consist of?
The food was terrible. It consisted of rice mainly. Then we'd get a little soup. The soup sometimes was very poor.
About how many Americans?
Water.
About how many Americans were at that camp?
There were 6,000 Americans.
And how was their health?
Their health was very bad.
And what was the main trouble?
Dysentery, malaria, dengue fever, beriberi, plague.
And what sort of medical attention did they give you?
At first up there was no medical attention. A few of the guys had a few pills. They were very hard to get.
I understand 2 more of you men were stationed on Corregidor and were there all during the fighting. We'll take you first. Will you give your name, hometown, organization, and from there tell what happened after the surrender?
My name is Corporal William Balchus. I'm from Pennsylvania in Monroe City. I was on Corregidor with Nielsen at the time of the surrender. I was in a different battery, ICAC 60th Coast Artillery. I went through the same thing from Corregidor as Nielsen did and wound up in Bataan. I stayed there for approximately 1 month. And from there, they took us to Manila and loaded us on a boat, and we went to Palawan.
That was a prison camp at Palawan?
Yes, sir. They made that a prison camp.
It wasn't a prison camp when you got there?
No, sir.
You built that yourself?
Yes, sir.
And that was at Puerto Princesa, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And how long were you at Puerto? When did you arrive at Puerto?
I arrived at Puerto August 1st, 1942.
And you stayed there in the prison camp until December 14th, 1944?
Yes, sir.
What did you do there?
I worked on the airfield for approximately 1 month. I was doing all labor, manual labor. And then I went cooking for the Americans.